your list to anybody else. That's a really important thing to me. So sign up on that site and you will get, usually Sunday or Monday, you get the postcard. It shows you who's going to be on the show for the week. And you go, oh, I didn't know that they were going to have so-and-so on the show. Well, that's fascinating. I want to tune in for that. It's kind of like getting a TV guide, but it's free. Okay, so we on Mondays always want to remind you, first of all, that we have lots of experts that are on the show. I've got some amazing guests on the show today, but I do always like to caution you that I am not one of the experts. I am a mom, a very proud mom, and I like to say that I have an informed opinion. I've been hosting shows having to do with autism in a journalistic format for over 10 years, and I've interviewed a lot of incredible people and have learned a lot of things, but that's what I am as a student, with an informed opinion, but not an expert at all. So just remember that, right? And I like to be able to be here to help you to get to the progress that you want, whether you are a parent, teacher, practitioner, or most especially if you are the person who's on the autism spectrum. We like to be a resource. We want to give hope, inspiration, and information. That's what we're about here. Because I know my son got the right help at the right time from the right people, and oh my goodness, the difference that it has made. And I want to help you to get to that for yourself. It doesn't always look the same, right? Because all of our kids are different, all of their environments are different, but there is help, there is hope, and I want to get you to the progress that leads to all of that. So, you know what I always say, we hold hands, si se puede, right? Okay, we like to start Mondays with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to figure out what in the hey nani nani are the experts talking about? How can this help me? How do I use this? So today's term, AAC. This is a really important term, and you probably have heard this and been like, I don't know what that stands for. So let's go ahead and show you the actual definition. AAC is augmentative and alternative communication. It's a range of communication methods used to supplement or replace speech or writing for those with impairments in the production or comprehension of spoken or written language. All right, that's a mouthful, but I think we all sort of kind of get our teeth around it, but there's a couple of things in there that's like, oh, hadn't thought of it that way, right? But let's take a look at our working definition that gets us a little bit easier into it. AAC includes all forms of communication other than vocal speech that are used to express thoughts, needs, wants, and ideas. So when we talk about giving someone augmentative communication device support, it's because everybody has a right to functional communication. Everyone has a right to functional communication. If you look at the trajectory of child development, right? Baby is born and they cry. And why do they cry? They cry because they need something. It is a form of communication. And there have been people who've studied at length that, one cry means that the baby needs to be held. Another cry means that the baby's wet, and another cry is that they are hungry. And I'm sure that there are more cries, right? And that you can actually get in tune with which cry means which. Most of us, before this research came out, we had our babies and it was like, okay, I don't know which cry this is, but I'm going to start with, feel, is the diaper wet, right? It's sort of that Occam's razor thing. It's probably the most likely thing, right? Or do you, maybe you have gas, so I'm gonna, just pat the baby and jiggle them a little bit. I'm gonna see if they're warm or if they're cold, and then if none of those work, or you check time, they're probably hungry, right? And so we feed the baby. And then if we continue to do all of those things and give the baby the bottle, and that still isn't stopping the cry, what do we do then? We go to the pediatrician, because the baby is communicating something and we haven't figured out what their needs are, and we want to make sure that it's not something, that's hurting them, right? So as they progress and they get a little bit older and they've been bombarded with all this language, and in the typically developing brain, they will start to hear that language first receptively and understand it, and then they will start approximations to try to communicate back. right? They really are learning a language. And if you think about how long it takes you, let's say you decide to study Spanish, you're not going to learn it in a weekend, right? Intensively, maybe you can learn it in 30 days if you're doing a very intensive program and you're submerged in it, maybe, right? But for most of it's a couple year proposition, right? And if it's just being thrown around you and not purposefully taught to you, it takes a little bit longer, right? So as a typically developing child begins to learn language and they understand language first, but they don't have the ability to express it, they get frustrated. And sometimes they throw things and they kick and they hit, and we call that the terrible twos. Because they can understand and they want to communicate to you and they know that it's quicker, faster if they can speak, but they can't speak it out enough for you to understand yet, which is very frustrating. And so they will try other ways to get their needs met. And imagine if that's all that ever happened. What if you couldn't get to the point where you could get speech out? What if you couldn't decipher what was being said to you? Then you will move to those other areas. You'll be frustrated and you will move to other forms of communication to try to get your needs met. And that will continue and progress until somebody gives you something better. And usually when somebody gives you something better, it's very quick in terms of relatively quick, right? I always go back to Annie Sullivan and Helen Keller. My goodness, I've had like a senior moment there. Annie Sullivan and Helen Keller. And, Annie Sullivan came in and worked for a great deal of time, months, and she would sign things into Helen's hands and put the thing in there. And Helen had no idea what was going on. This was a complete new language in a place of complete darkness. But Helen, was there and didn't have a whole lot else going on, and Annie continued. She would sign something into Helen's hand and then put the thing into her hand until finally Helen got the first word. And I always get confused about which word was first and which one is second. I know that the words were doll and water, but I think it was doll first, and then she takes her out into the back and signs water. And it took forever to get to doll. But once she got doll and she really got it, and then she went and taught her water. Water came 3 seconds after doll, and then the learning, it was on, right? So imagine if we had not given Helen Keller the ability to be able to understand what was going on. And she was like a wild animal in her house by all accounts. She couldn't sit at the table. She threw food because she was just reacting to she didn't know what, right? So it's so important. It's like a basic human right to have the ability to communicate. And if a person doesn't have that neurotypical experience where they just sort of came to it, it's kind of miraculous that anybody does get language, right? As a baby. But for people who don't come at it that way, we have a responsibility to give them another way. We just do. And thank goodness we live in a time and an environment in which it's easier than ever because we have devices, whether it is a Dynavox or whether it is an iPad or another kind of tablet. We have the ability to put technology in somebody's hands and fairly quickly teach them, okay, this is how I can tell you this, right? Even without a device, if a device, for whatever reason, child is too young, I'm trying to think of circumstances where we absolutely couldn't do a device. Sometimes it's financial, and I hate that. But we know that we can do a picture exchange system that where the person is given tokens that have a picture of something and have the text of it, and they can exchange that for that thing. And there are people who, it's called PEX, a picture exchange system. And there are other, PEX is pretty fabulous. There are other iconic communication systems that are like that, where you're exchanging something for something. But my goodness, we have to give everybody that right. It's just unconscionable for us not to. And I know that there are parents watching who are like, but wait a second, I don't want to give up on speech. I just want to tell you that the studies are very clear. When we give functional communication to someone, if they're going to speak, they speak much faster than if we don't. If you really truly want to get to speech and you're not getting to it right now, it's not coming easily for your child, and you're getting challenging behavior, it's time. Give them functional communication and trust that the speech, if you've got a good ABA provider, the speech will come with that. They will use it hand in hand to get to the speech, because it is the best way to teach it, by giving them language of one kind. If you don't know language at all, and how to communicate, especially the English language, it's a very difficult thing. It just makes me want to pour water on my head and be like, right? Give people functional communication. And assisted augmentative devices, best way to do that. If you need help and support with that, there are people who give grants. Insurance companies now pretty much across the board will give you a device if you're needing it for functional communication. You just have to have your ABA provider say you need this, and most insurances now will allow you to do that. I'm getting way behind, so let's move on to our question of the day. And you can write in your answers to this on Facebook if you like, or on YouTube. And we want to know, how has technology helped you? Like, if everything was shut down for 24 hours and you didn't have any technology, what would you miss the most and why? How does it help you? How does it support you? I did not have my phone the other day, and it was like everything that I wanted to do, I was like, well, I'm just going to text somebody and say I'm going to be late because I'm looking for my phone. Oh, I don't have my phone to do that, right? I was like, I wanted to check where my son was. I can tell where he is on my phone. Didn't have my phone with me. My ability to communicate with my son, especially across distances, and know that he's safe, has been so helped by technology. So write into us. Tell us how technology has helped you. All right, moving on. We have a topic of the week. Can you guess what it is? I bet you can. All this week, we're going to be talking about autism and technology. What a boon for autism technology has been. And I got to say, I think that autism has been a boon for technology too, because there are more and more people who are on the autism spectrum that are going into technology jobs and making a huge difference. So I love that. We're going to be talking about this week, and about embracing technology. Like, let's bring the technology on. Let's look at, like, what can we do to be helping somebody, and look at it through a technology lens. And what do we need? There are bright minds who still want to know what we need from technology. So let's talk about that this week. But on the show today, I got to tell you, I got two amazing guests for you. We're late to talk to Bonnie Yates. She's probably sitting there going like this. We're going to do Your Rights with Bonnie Yates. And then we have a fabulous guest for the first time in the show. Megan Dolan is going to be joining us. She has a one-woman show called Lemur Mom, and it's all about her experience of being a mom of someone on the autism spectrum. I believe somebody diagnosed more on the Asperger end of things, which I find super interesting, and we can't wait to talk to her about her show, tell you when and where you can see it, and where it might be coming to for you to see it. So that's going to be towards the end of the show. So I want to take a quick break, and we're going to come back with Bonnie Yates answering some of your questions, but more importantly, we're going to be talking about least restrictive environment today. So stick with us.
Hey, I'm Candace Cameron Bray.
Tom Bergeron.
You're watching Autism Live.
And you're watching Autism Live.
And you're watching Autism Live.
You're watching Autism Live.
Can you have a life with autism? Absolutely not. Give it up right now. No, that's not true. I'm here to tell you, you can have a life with autism. I have a life with autism, and it's a good one. When you start on this journey, you don't know what's going to happen. You really have no idea. You're kind of in shell shock for the first couple years. It could be as long as 5 years until you realize, I do matter to people. When my son was first diagnosed, I remember thinking I would go anywhere and do anything for him. I didn't even think about it. I just came way at the bottom of the list. However, after a few years passed, I realized if I'm not important anymore, then that means no one's going to be here for him. So how do you have this life with autism? It's not easy. It's never going to be easy, but it can be done. It's really all about support. And support is a word you're going to hear a lot when you deal with the autism power structure. And that means schools, government agencies, social service agencies that can help you. There are things out there that you don't even know exist. So once you start connecting with other parents, you're going to kind of find this treasure chest full of things that only they can help you unlock. But once you get that support, it could be a babysitter coming to your home. It could be a therapist to take your child out and get him into the community. You can either leave the house, do your shopping, go to a farmer's market, do whatever you want to do. And it doesn't matter if it's really only about 5% of your time. As long as it's dedicated to you, that's going to help. It's all about your willingness to find support and your willingness to accept change and your willingness to kind of stick up for yourself, because you're battling for your child and you have to realize you guys are connected. There's a bond between you and your child that can never be broken. And if you're doing well, then your child's going to do well. So finding what you need to be happy, whole, and healthy as a person is a way that you can have a life with autism. And that's important too, because if you have a life with autism, you can also give your child a life too.
Yeah. Oh, welcome back. I'm talking to Bonnie Yates about a question that we had yesterday, last Wednesday, that we had Evelyn Kung answer, because it was a question that part of it might be legal, but part of it was behavioral. And anyway, Bonnie Yates is with us. Let's start from there. The fabulous Bonnie Yates. And we lost your video, Bonnie.
Yeah, I know. What's happening? Let me figure that out. Okay, hold on. I see what happens.
All right, so she's going to work on... Well, there we have Bonnie.
Got me back.
Yay! And
here I am.
For those of you who watch the show on a regular basis, Bonnie's with us now on Mondays. This segment we call Your Rights, because your rights matter. And Bonnie is a special education attorney. It is IEP season. And we know that a lot of you are going through a lot of different things as you get your IEPs done. Bonnie is coming to us from the law firm of Hirji and Chow, and we are getting some sort of a crackling noise, though, Bonnie. And
that's probably the scarf against the headset.
All right. But in any case, Bonnie, talk to us a little bit about Hirji and Chow, and give us your legal disclaimer, please.
Okay. So Hirji and Chow is a special education and disability discrimination law firm. We're located in Culver City, California. Our phone number is 310-391-0330, and our website is www.lawyer4, that's number 4, lawyer4children.com. And we're trying to educate everybody about all these legal rights that we have that we don't even realize we have, so that you can use them effectively when you need to interact with your school district. It's not a substitute for specific legal advice about a specific problem. If you live in Southern California, we'll be happy to do an intake with you and give you some more focused advice. If you're elsewhere, we recommend that you look at the COPA website, www.copa.net. There's really no substitute for talking to an attorney in your own state who's well-versed in special education matters, so you can figure out what to do about your child's situation.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bonnie. And we know that... Yes.
Shannon, before we jump in, I wanted to say, IEP season has sort of manifested in a strange way this spring. Maybe I'm just not remembering, but the energy in the air is just frantic, and parents are feeling really, really stressed, and we're feeling the stress too. So I took a step back and I said to myself, what is causing this? And I think what's causing it is it's the end of the school year. People are very panicked that they aren't going to be able to move to the next step in their action plan because the school year's ending and there's no ability to do an IEP for 3 months. So what I wanted to say about that is, even if that is the case, oftentimes there's a lot that can be done over the summer. And so, if you have a proper case plan and you have the steps laid out, in theory, you should be able to get whatever you need done before the end of the school year so that you can keep on moving in a linear fashion during the summer toward your next objectives. But that experience for parents is just so hard on top of everything they're already dealing with. And it's hard for us too, because we feel it coming from you. So, it's a bit odd that we have a system where we have no IEPs over the summer. I mean, we have classes over the summer. There's extended school year. Assessments by private evaluators occur over the summer. Due process hearings occur over the summer. So I hate to say it, but, we probably need to move to a year-round system of doing IEPs as well.
Yeah. And I think it's probably going to take a lot of parents lobbying for that. But I think it's one of those arbitrary things that they probably put in place many years ago, don't you, Bonnie, where they just were like, well, we don't have staff during the summer, so we're not going to do this. And that isn't the case anymore. Staff is there all summer long.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was supposed to be based on summertime being a vacation. And if you subpoena witnesses for a due process hearing in the summertime, the school district will still try to get the case continued and they will say it's an inconvenience and it's costly for them because they have to bring people in and pay them extra. So we use that actually tactically to our advantage. Like, we really like it when things get scheduled during the summer because we can do it and they can't. They really don't want to.
Right.
So that's just something that occurred to me today while we were getting ready to get started.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that so much. We talked a little bit about there was a question last Wednesday. Evelyn Kung answered it from the behavioral standpoint. We said to the parent, write back to us if this doesn't work, because it will become a legal thing at some point if this doesn't work. So I wanted to touch base with you on this, but then we want to have a few minutes to talk about LRE. So basically, this mom wrote in and said there's a 9-year-old going to public school, and he's been having a really hard time for the last couple of months. He's been hitting, scratching, kicking, biting teachers and himself, destroying school property, and saying bad words. The parent went to observe herself and said that she felt bad, that she felt that most of the time it was that he was aggravated by something. And that even at home, he says that he wants to bite himself, that he's having self-regulation issues. They've been trying to work on it a bunch of different ways behaviorally. And basically, the principal has said if this doesn't stop, that they're going to suspend him. Now,
yeah, well, that's totally improper, and I'm interested that he said that. My first question is the student had any medication change? Is he on medication? If he's not, even without hypothesizing about the clinical reasons that he might be acting out in these ways, that's, you don't punish the person for having a behavior problem. You do a functional behavior assessment and you figure out the underlying causes of the behavior and you come up with a plan for how you're going to manage that behavior and redirect the child into more pro-social behavior. So that's an off-the-cuff remark from a frustrated principal. But if you suspended him for that, that would be. I mean, I guess you could suspend him. You certainly can't expel him. But then the response to that would be it's a denial of FAPE because you failed to address in the area of behavior when there's a clear need that he needs a functional behavior assessment. So that's how I'd answer that.
Well, and that's thrilling because what Evelyn said was the first thing you need to do is put in writing and ask for a functional behavior assessment from a board-certified behavior analyst, and that in order to do the functional behavior assessment on the behavior so that a behavior intervention plan can be written and attached to the IEP. And we were saying that's what really needs to happen, but if the school in any way does not comply with that, then and if they continue with moving forward with the idea of suspension, that then it becomes a legal issue, and that and Evelyn said, they can't be penalizing somebody for something that is clearly in their diagnosis, and So in any case, I'm thrilled that we're all on the same page, Bonnie.
Well, the other thing is we've covered this a little before, and maybe I need to give it to everybody again. You can Google it. The family's entitled to prior written notice. In other words, the family should ask why he's being suspended rather than having an assessment in the area of functional behavior, since the district has a duty to assess in all areas of suspected disability. And they should ask for prior written notice. The school district has to give them a written response stating the basis for their decision and the documents or things that they relied upon. So I think that the family should definitely ask for prior written.
Okay.
And the principal needs to understand that, if he goes through with the suspension, he might be buying himself a due process, which usually people don't want to do.
Okay.
So.
All right.
Okay.
So, and then we were going to talk a little bit about least restrictive environment.
Yeah. It's interesting because one of the great things about doing the show for me, in addition to being able to interact with all the parents that you have, send questions into the show, is that I've been able to take like an hour a week or something, here and there to actually really legally focus on the questions that people have. And that's just been great because what I've found is there's a lot of stuff in the law that's really favorable to us. And, if people like me don't know it, and I think I should know it, but if I don't know it, then probably a lot of other, how should I expect the school staff to know these things if I don't know these things? So I'm trying to find my place where we left off last week, but while I do that, reading about this area of least restrictive environment was very interesting to me because there's really so much stuff in the law that supports inclusion, and I don't hear it being talked about in this way at IEP meetings at all. The burden, as we discussed last week, is on the district to prove that it's offered the least restrictive environment, but that's not what happens. We have to go in and beg for little crumbs, like, oh, please let us have, a music class or something with general ed peers, and that's not the way it's supposed to work. The evaluation should start from, if you have a circle, that's like the pie, right? The pie should be, all cherry pie, and cherry pie is like general ed. And that's the presumption. And then if you're going to have like peach pie or pumpkin pie or something like that, it has to be a rational IEP team decision that justifies moving away from the presumption of LRE. So where we stopped last week was, was sort of giving people a theoretical explanation about the LRE mandate. And now we're going to get into some more specifics. And so, for example, do all of you know that the presumption is that the child should be educated in the same school that they would go to if they weren't disabled? So that not only means that there's a presumption in favor of general ed with supports and services, there's also a presumption that the child is going to attend school at his home school. That comes up sometimes.
You said that to me a year ago, Bonnie, and it blew my mind, and I've been talking to parents about it ever since, and everybody's like, honestly, where exactly can we find this? Because everybody's like, I had no idea. And can I tell you, I was at an event last Friday that I went to, and I was talking to parents about what you had said last Wednesday about that the presumption is that they should be mainstreamed. And everybody's like, schools don't present it that way. And I said, I know, right? Like the whole idea of kids being mainstreamed, we all feel as though, and schools act as though, it's something we have to prove that they could succeed.
Yeah. That we have the presumption on our side. The presumption is that the child will be educated in LRE. Now here's where we get into the nuances. This area has been litigated a lot. And I am told that for the most part, the decisions from the 50 states have been in favor of an integrated education with as much general ed as possible. So I'm going to just read you some stuff for flavor. There's a presumption among the alternative programs of education and training required by the statute to be available, placement in a regular public school class is preferable to placement in a special public school class. So the presumption is when the court looks at everything, the court looks at it through the lens of, like, why can't we do it in general ed? And what would be needed to do it in general ed? And the cases are very clear that cost can't be a factor, administrative convenience can't be a factor. If you can make it happen in general ed without it creating undue burden on the teacher, and the student is learning enough in the classroom to justify, maybe more difficult curriculum, then you have to do general ed, or you have to do least restrictive environment. So the Supreme Court's comment on this in 1982, way back in 1982, was the act, that's the IDEA, requires participating states to educate handicapped children with non-handicapped children wherever possible. In California, the Federal Appeals Court stated that congressional preference for educating handicapped children in classrooms with their peers is made unmistakably clear. Another federal court found that denying access to regular public school classrooms could constitute discrimination. And when you start talking about discrimination, you're no longer talking about the IDEA, you're talking about Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act and the ADA, and those statutes provide for money damages in the event of illegal discrimination. Furthermore, federal special education law requires school systems to supplement and realign their resources to move beyond those system structures and practices which tend to result in unnecessary segregation of children with disabilities. And I stopped and thought about that a lot, because I can count on, maybe like one finger in the 20 years I've been doing this, the amount of times there's been an inclusion facilitator brought in to actually make it happen. And so it's this, mainstreaming or full inclusion or partial inclusion in general ed requires open-mindedness, rolled up sleeves and a certain amount of creativity. And I think that people in public education mostly don't believe in this. I could be wrong. They're welcome to tell me that I'm wrong. So they go through the motions, and the motions are very ineffective. So, what we typically have are situations that just perpetuate the segregation. So you might have, like, kids being brought into another teacher's class for sort of a mainstream, lunchtime or activity. But if there's no interaction among the children, and that's what we see a lot, then it's no different than being in a segregated classroom. The burden is on the school district to prove that a student cannot be educated successfully in the regular classroom. So when you're being pushed into a special ed class that you don't want to be in, the thing to tell the IEP team is the burden is on you to prove that we can't do this with supplementary aids and services in the general ed classroom. What are your reasons? The Act's strong presumption in favor of mainstreaming would be turned on its head if parents had to prove that their child was worthy of being included, rather than the school district having to justify a decision to exclude the child from the regular classroom. That's a case from the Third Circuit that was talking about the right to be mainstreamed. In California, we had a big decision in 1992. It was Rachel Holland versus Sacramento. And in that case, parents attempted to have their daughter mainstreamed into, I believe it was like a kindergarten or first grade classroom, and the school said no, it would put an undue burden on the school. She'd be too disruptive. She wasn't going to learn enough. And the court came up with a balancing test that determines when you do or don't get to be fully included in the general ed classroom. So because of LRE, Holland says the presumption imposes a burden on the school district to prove that a child cannot be mainstreamed. And the balancing of factors looks at the educational benefit of each setting, the non-academic benefit of interacting, which the courts have said is important, that's not trivial, the effect on the classroom, and you look at disruption and undue consumption of time. It's not enough that the student takes more the teacher's time. It has to be undue burden or undue consumption of time. And they can look at cost, but I haven't really seen too much that actually does talk about cost, even though I think cost is really the reason they object to full inclusion in part. What you need to be able to show is no undue burden and satisfactory educational progress. And the bar for, or the proof that you're required to show for satisfactory educational progress is not high. You have to make some educational progress. And that would be determined by your IEP goals, and that's why it's so important that you know how to write an IEP with appropriate goals for mainstreaming, because as long as you're meeting your educational goals, I don't, in the early grades particularly, they're not going to be able to say you aren't getting educational benefit out of it.
Now, Bonnie, is that a good place for us to pause, because we're just about out of time?
Yeah, we could stop here.
Okay.
We can talk next time about how you balance and how you write an IEP for people so that they get the benefits of the least restrictive environment. That was where we were going next.
Okay, cool. And I'm wondering, for parents who are enlightened to this information, a lot of times then they'll come back and say, well, where do I find exactly what Bonnie just said to us? Like finding out that the presumption should be...
I'll send you the chapter from which I borrowed heavily.
Okay.
And you can share it with them. I think it's well researched and well written.
Fabulous.
Yeah, I'll send that.
We appreciate that, Kitty. Okay, cool. Very cool. Thank you so much, Bonnie. Give us again the information about Hirji Chow.
Okay, Hirji Chow, 310-391-0330, lawyerforchildren.com. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Bonnie. We'll look forward to talking to you next week.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. Bye-bye. All right, we're going to take a break, and then we are going to come back. We are back with to finish out the show with Megan Dolan, who is the Lemur Mom. You're not going to want to go anywhere. Stick with us.
Do you provide care services to someone with autism? Recently, more and more children are being diagnosed with the condition and getting the support they need as awareness grows. But what happens to these children as they grow up? It's estimated that over 500,000 youth with autism will turn 18 in the next decade, and they'll be faced with a very difficult reality. As children with autism grow up, their services start to disappear or become very difficult to access. Things like medical care, mental health counseling, vocational training, and more. All services that are still desperately needed. The loss of support that youth with autism face as they grow up is so severe that it's referred to in the autism community as falling off a cliff. Adults with autism need the same level of support they had as children to avoid falling off the services cliff. Introducing Skills Living, the web-based software designed specifically to help transitioning youth and adults with autism so they can avoid the cliff and instead fly to success. With Skills Living, help your learner with autism develop the skills they need in all the critical areas of adult life, including self-control, planning, and problem-solving, effective communication, performing life skill tasks for independent living, acquiring and maintaining employment or other meaningful activities, developing and maintaining social skills and relationships, accessing transportation and public services, and being safe. Skills Living includes a comprehensive assessment, a data collection mobile app, behavior intervention plan builder, and automatic progress reporting. It also provides a complete curriculum addressing 16 key areas spanning the entire range of functioning adulthood. Skills Living is easy to use and can be implemented by schools, parents, and autism service providers. Call or click today for your free demo and see how Skills Living can help your learner with autism avoid the cliff and instead reach their fullest potential. Skills Living. Wish, learn, become.
Hi, Lisa Ackerman back with Talk of Facts. Questions, real life questions and answers for the autism journey. Oh, are you ready for this one? Talk to me about puberty. So what I would recommend is first and foremost is the kids that have done the therapeutics, the medical, and the dietary allergen removal interventions tend to have an easier time at puberty. Seizures are really common for children on the spectrum, more than neurotypical populations, and they're especially most common right at or about puberty time. So it's extremely important, even if you have a 10-year-old, that you've already done an EEG, that you consider before they go through puberty to get a second EEG done. Just because you have one clean EEG with no abnormal brain activity or seizure activity, you need to do another one prior to puberty. That's one of the most common calls we get with teens on the spectrum, is they are often experiencing a seizure for what their family thinks is the first time. And the third thing is you're gonna have a teenager, so you're really gonna have to kick it up a notch on those life skills, social skills, and getting your kid ready to be that teenager they need to be. So if you're doing that baby thing, and I know you are, where you're maybe making their lunches or helping them with laundry, we need to start bouncing some chores over to those kids. And we also need to increase social environments where they can be successful. So think about it. We've got 3 really important things that we need to look at. Puberty is a very serious issue, and we take it very seriously. So make sure you have all of your therapeutics, medical, and dietary interventions in place. Consider to do another 24-hour EEG with your physician prior to puberty. And the third most important thing, get ready to raise the bar. Your job is to really get them ready for life. And I know you can do it.
Welcome back, you guys, to Autism Live. We have joining us via Skype Megan Dolan, and she is the Lemur Mom. She's got a one-woman show. Hi, Megan.
Hi.
She's got a one-woman show, the Lemur Mom, that is well, you tell us, what's it about, Megan?
Okay, well, I started writing the show in 2016. My son was diagnosed with autism when he was 5, and the show is basically about when I started going to these doctor's appointments and going to the support groups, I felt like I was surrounded by kind of type A moms, and that I didn't fit in. And I was terrified that my son was going to be at a disadvantage because I didn't know what I was doing. And so I started writing just about the different situations that I would find myself in, and use a lot of detail and just a lot of honesty. And that's where the show kind of started from. I just started writing these pieces, and then would perform them at different storytelling shows like Expressing Motherhood, and then over time gathered enough of the pieces to put a whole show together.
And the show is called Lemur Mom.
Yes, because we can't all be Tiger Mom.
I was going to say, there we go. Wonderful, and there it is. And I think you've gotten amazing reviews, especially from parents saying that they laugh. Yeah, well, and from individual parents. I've had friends who have seen the show and have said, "Oh my gosh, Shannon, you've got to see it. It's absolutely hilarious." That they laughed, they cried, and that it was they left feeling great. 'Cause I think a lot of times people go, "Oh, what's an autism parent going to say about this?" But I hear that you are hysterical, Megan.
Thank you.
And I want to see the show really badly. But let's talk about a couple of things here. So it took you 2.5 years to write this.
Yes.
Tell us, why was that? Because for the regular person, they may not understand why 2.5 years.
Well, because I have 2 small children, and I'm a stay-at-home mom, and so sometimes I would spend 10 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, and I would just set a timer, and I would work for that amount of time, and then after a couple weeks, I'd be able to edit whatever I had. So that's part of why it took so long.
And was this...
It's hard to find those chunks of time. Yeah.
Exactly, especially when you have 2 kids, and one diagnosed on the spectrum. Is this sort of your background? Is this, are you an actor, writer, so this was sort of the go-to for you for how to deal with this?
Yes, that's a great point. Yes, I studied acting. I graduated from Cal State Long Beach with a theater arts degree many years ago, and then I was part of the Elephant Theater Company in Hollywood for many, many years, and then when we had my daughter, my second child, we moved down to Long Beach, and I felt like I wouldn't be able to drive up to LA to be a part of the productions, and that was when I really started writing. And luckily, the whole kind of storytelling scene with the moth and things like that kind of took off, and so I started getting involved with that. And so really my
Well, and I think a wonderful service to the autism community. Now, I understand you've got 2 scheduled performances coming up, 2 shows. Tell us about where and when.
Yes, it's at they're at the Whitefire Theater Sunday, May 19th, so that's this coming Sunday, and then Sunday, June 2nd at 3 o'clock. The Whitefire Theater is in Sherman Oaks, and tickets are available at lemurmom.com, and I've made a special promo code for Autism Live, Autism-Live, and that you can get a discounted price.
Wonderful. Autism-Live, and you get the fabulous. Okay, and one of the things, I think this is a really interesting and unique thing, is that parents have said that this is a stress reliever for them. Talk about that and how, because that's an amazing thing for you to have accomplished that.
Well, thank you. And yes, the feedback that I've gotten is that it really resonates with people. And some people have said, they'll want to laugh at these situations, but then almost feel ashamed to laugh, like not knowing if it's okay to laugh. But what I'm finding is when there are a lot of special needs parents in my audience, the laughter is nonstop. It's more people that aren't immersed in this world that kind of feel like, is it okay to laugh at that? Whereas the people who are in the trenches really get it and really relate to it. And it's really, I really go into the feeling of judgment that we can have as parents, and that what a relief it is to connect on a deeper level. And people have told me, they always say, oh, you're so brave, and thank you for bringing your humanity, because I really try to share my truth, and that gives other people permission then after the show to have these conversations about what it's really like and what they've been through. And that it's such a gift to me. That's just an absolute joy.
And so how old are your kids now? And don't answer if you don't want to, but.
Oh, no, my son is 9 now, and my daughter is 7. And my son had 2.5 years of ADA. Our insurance approved it, and he's at a private school, and that was really key for him as far as socially really making that connection. He finally made the connection where he said, Mommy, it's more fun to do things with friends than to do things by myself. And once he realized that, it was a huge kind of breakthrough for him.
Well, so he sounds like he's doing very well now then.
He is. He's doing very well.
And that's a wonderful thing. Have either of your kids seen the show or parts of the show?
They haven't. It has profanity.
No, seriously.
And a good friend of mine brought up a good point, because I do sometimes have mixed feelings about. I'm not sure how my son would feel about seeing himself in the show, but she said that she thinks that when the kids are old enough, it'll be something that we can really have a conversation about. And I have told him, I said that I wrote a show about when he wouldn't talk, and that it's helping parents who are in similar situations. And he seemed okay with that, but no, they haven't seen it. Okay,
well, that's fascinating. That'll be fun for when they get to see that. And now, so there's 2 shows coming up, but there's the potential for shows, I would imagine, and we have an audience that's really international, although largely United States, but all over United States. So if there were a group of people that wanted you to come and bring the show to their area, is that something that you would entertain?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. That's what I'm hoping could happen from this. I'm also hoping that I could tour the United States or internationally if there's a demand for the show. I really feel like it's just getting started. I think this show coming up, it'll be maybe the 8th time that I've done the show in total, because I just started in November. I did 2 shows, and then I've done a series of shows in the spring. So yeah, I would absolutely, that's a possibility, and I'm very open to that and excited about that.
Very cool. So tell us, if people are not in the Los Angeles area, where can they go to sort of follow what's happening and to get more information?
Oh, great. Okay, so my website is www.lemurmom.com, and then you can also contact me via email at lemurmom13@gmail.com. And those are the best ways to find out what's next for the show. I'll be posting on the website.
Megan, were there really 12 lemur moms before you, or 13 is just your number?
I know. I guess there were. I don't know.
Okay.
And you know what's funny is some people read it as Lemur Mom, like a French mom. Like the lemurs aren't as well known as I thought they were.
Oh, that's so funny. There's that kids show where they have the lemur that, do you know what I'm talking about, that jumps? Yes. And then what was fascinating to me was that we probably watched that show for 2 years before I realized that sometimes it was a real lemur and sometimes it was a puppet. Like I thought the puppet was a real lemur. It was so upsetting to me. I mean, I love puppets. Thank you very much. But I was like, that's a puppet? Oh my gosh, I thought it was the real lemur. I guess I wasn't paying attention. Anyway, I love lemurs. So I think that it's a really wonderful thing. I've heard nothing but great things about the show. We really want to encourage people, if they can. So there's another show on May 19th, and then there's one on Sunday, June 2nd at 3 p.m. at the Whitefire Theater in Sherman Oaks. That's right on Ventura Boulevard for people who live locally. Wonderful.
And it's 75-minute running time, no intermission, so you're in and out.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's a tour de force for you. 75 minutes, no break?
Yes. I have a water bottle on stage, and there's little like musical interludes just in between scenes. But yeah, it's just me, 75 minutes.
That's a workout.
It is. It is. I do a lot of hot yoga to try to maintain my stamina.
Okay. Well, we're so excited that you could take the time to be with us. And we had a video clip, but we couldn't show it, and I'm bummed about that. But definitely go to Megan's site. So it's lemurmom.com and read more about it.
It's there, the promo, yes.
Okay, and so we do have a couple of pictures. It looks very fun, and just from the clip, it looks very funny. And I have heard from people whose opinions I respect and admire that it is hilarious, and that you are hilarious.
Oh, thank you so much.
And that you got A+. So, and the autism community can be a little, they don't always love things. So the fact that I've heard nothing but good things, Megan, absolutely, I'm excited for you and for the opportunities for this. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Shannon. It was so great to talk to you. I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you.
You too. So again, lemurmom.com, and if you can get to those performances, definitely do that. Thank you, Megan. Yes. Oh, and don't forget the promo code. He just put it up on the screen, Autism-Live, to get a discount on that. It's not .com, but it is Autism-Live. Autism-Live.com gets you to our website.
That's the promo code to enter.
All right. All right, we got it all figured out now. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you, Shannon.
All right, bye-bye. Take care. So definitely get to that show if you can. I seriously have heard amazing things about it. Okay, you guys, we're just about to be out of time, but we've got a really great week for you this week. We are going to be hearing from the folks at Spec Labs. We've got, Vince Redmond. We've got Jan Blacker this week, and the amazing Matt Asner is going to be joining us later on in the week to talk about the upcoming Ed Asner poker tournament. I cannot wait for this. I'm so excited about it. But also about some really exciting things that are happening with the Ed Asner Family Center. It's just really shaping up to be all the things that they've been talking about that they had wanted. They just made a big announcement the other day about including a mental health piece that was very important to them, and I'm sure Matt's going to talk with us about all that. So we're going to be back tomorrow with a best of show, but then on Wednesday, I believe we're back here. If I'm not mistaken, we're back here with Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you. Bye-bye for now.